X. The security camera timestamp reads 7:12 a.m. when Priya Oduya steps out of the elevator at the Westbrook Financial Tower in downtown Calgary. X. She's not supposed to be there. X. Not because she's trespassing, but because Priya Oduya, 31 years old, former signals intelligence specialist with the Canadian Forces, decorated twice and discharged honorably after 8 years, doesn't work in buildings like this anymore. She works in a van, a white Telus utility van parked on 9th Avenue, eating a breakfast sandwich that's gone cold, doing contract security assessments for corporations that would rather not know what she finds. X. That morning, she finds something they didn't hire her to find. X. She almost walks past it. X. She's crossing the lobby toward the east exit, laptop bag over one shoulder, mind already 3 steps ahead. She needs to check the parking structure cameras before the 8 a.m. shift change, when something catches the corner of her eye. Not movement exactly, more like the absence of it, a stillness that doesn't fit. X. There's a woman sitting in one of the lobby chairs near the revolving door, not the kind of sitting that means waiting for someone. The kind of sitting that means the body has simply stopped. X. Priya stops too. X. The woman is older, late 70s maybe, or early 80s. It's hard to tell. She's dressed well. A wool coat the color of slate, a silk scarf folded precisely at her neck, small pearl earrings. Her handbag sits upright in her lap, both hands resting on top of it, fingers laced. Her eyes are open, pointed at the revolving door, but she's not watching it. She's looking at something that isn't there. X. Priya has seen that look before. X. Not here, not in Calgary. X. She saw it in her grandmother's eyes, 3 weeks before her grandmother stopped recognizing her. That particular kind of absence, like someone left a light on in a house where nobody's home anymore. X. She walks over. X. Ma'am? X. The woman doesn't respond immediately. Priya crouches down to eye level, the way she was trained never to tower over a person in distress, and tries again, softer this time. X. Hi there, are you doing okay? X. Slow blink. Then the woman's eyes shift, and for a moment there's a flicker of something, recognition, maybe, or just the reflex of being addressed. X. I'm waiting, the woman says. Her voice is clear, educated, the kind of voice that once commanded rooms. X. Waiting for someone? X. A pause. Robert. X. Is Robert coming here to pick you up? X. Another pause, longer. He said he'd come. X. Priya looks around the lobby. The morning rush hasn't hit yet. A few security staff, a janitor buffing the marble floor near the elevators, a woman in a blazer walking fast toward the cafe. Nobody is paying attention to the old woman in the chair. Nobody has stopped. X. She sets her bag down and sits in the empty chair beside her. X. My name's Priya, she says. What's your name? X. A beat. Margaret. X. Margaret. That's a good name. Strong name. She means it. Is there someone I can call for you? Do you have a phone with you? X. Margaret looks down at her handbag. She opens it, slowly, and looks inside with the focused concentration of someone who has forgotten what they're looking for. Then she closes it again. X. Robert said he'd come, she says. X. Priya doesn't push. She sits there. The janitor rolls past without looking over. 2 men in suits step off the elevator talking about a merger and walk straight out through the revolving door without glancing sideways. X. She reaches into her own bag and pulls out her phone. Can I look in your bag? Sometimes there's a card or a number written down. Would that be okay? X. Margaret looks at her for a long moment, assessing. Whatever is clouded in there, the judgment isn't entirely gone. X. You're not from the building, she says. X. No, ma'am, I'm not. I'm just someone who noticed you sitting here. X. Another long look. Then Margaret nods, one small precise nod, and holds the bag out. X. Inside, Priya finds a transit pass, $40 in cash folded neatly, a packet of tissues, and a small, zippered pouch. Inside the pouch is a card, a business card for a place called Clearwater Ridge. Assisted care, it says, in Airdrie. There's a number on the back written in pencil, not printed. Someone's handwriting, large and careful, the way you write something for someone who needs to read it clearly. X. Priya calls the number. X. It rings 4 times and goes to voicemail. She hangs up and calls the main number on the front of the card instead. X. Clearwater Ridge, good morning. X. Good morning. I'm calling because I think I may have found one of your residents. Her name is Margaret. I'm at the Westbrook Financial Tower in downtown Calgary. She's safe. She's sitting with me in the lobby, but I don't think she's sure how she got here. X. There is a sharp sound on the other end. The intake of breath that precedes panic. X. Oh my God, Margaret Fenn? How long is she all right? Is she... X. She's calm. She's well-dressed. She's coherent in moments. She's been sitting here for what looks like a while. X. We've been looking for her since 6:30. I'm so sorry. Please stay with her. We're calling her family right now. Please don't let her leave. X. I'm not going anywhere, Priya says. X. She's not. X. She stays for 40 minutes. She gets Margaret a cup of tea from the cafe. Margaret takes it with 2 sugars, very specific about that, and they sit together while the morning lobby fills up around them. Margaret tells her about a garden she used to have. Roses, mostly. She says the trick with roses is that people prune too early. You have to wait for the canes to tell you they're ready. Priya doesn't know anything about roses, but she listens like she does, because the listening is the point. X. What Priya doesn't know is that there is a camera above them. X. Not the one she's been hired to assess. A private camera, part of the building's executive security system, covering the lobby chairs and the revolving entrance. Monitored, in theory, by the building's head of security. But that morning it's being watched by someone else. X. Jeffrey Crane stands at the floor-to-ceiling window on the 32nd floor and looks down at the street below, not watching the lobby feed. He's been in this building since 5:45. He does that most mornings, comes in before the city, wakes up, walks the empty hallways of the company he built, thinks about his father who died before he could see any of it. X. His assistant, a young man named Tobias, who has learned to read the particular silence of early mornings, brings him a coffee and mentions, almost in passing, that Vance from lobby security flagged something on the camera. X. What kind of something? X. He said there's a woman. She's been sitting in the lobby for about an hour, and there's another woman sitting with her. Vance thought you'd want to know, given Mrs. Fenn's family. X. Jeffrey sets down his coffee. X. The Fenns. The name lands like a stone. X. Margaret Fenn is the mother of Douglas Fenn, who sits on Jeffrey's board of directors, who has, for the past 3 months, been quietly, and not so quietly, pushing to have Jeffrey's position restructured. The polite word is restructured. The real word is removed. Douglas Fenn, who has called Jeffrey's leadership style emotionally reactive in a board memo that Jeffrey was not supposed to see. X. Douglas Fenn, whose signature is at the bottom of a letter currently sitting in Jeffrey's lawyer's inbox. X. Jeffrey takes the elevator to the lobby. X. He doesn't know what he's expecting. Something staged, maybe. Something that will become a story, a narrative, a way for the Fenn family to paint him as callous or negligent. X. What he finds is a woman sitting with his rival's elderly mother, holding a paper cup of tea steady for her while Margaret's hands tremble slightly, talking about roses. X. He stands there for a moment before either of them notices him. X. Priya looks up first. Her eyes don't show surprise, they show assessment. The kind of calm, measuring attention that Jeffrey recognizes from people who have been trained to read rooms. X. Mr. Crane, she says. Not a question, exactly. She knows who he is. He's the reason her van is parked outside. X. Yes, he looks at Margaret, Mrs. Fenn. X. Margaret looks up at him. Something moves through her face. Not recognition, not fully, but his voice, some register of his voice. X. Jeffrey, she says. X. He blinks. X. He crouches down the way Priya did. His suit jacket pulls at his shoulders. He doesn't care. X. Mrs. Fenn, I'm here. He glances at Priya. How long has she been here? X. I found her around 7:15. Care facility is sending someone. Her family's been contacted. X. Her family. He says it flatly. He knows what that means. He knows Douglas has been getting calls all morning and is probably, right now in a car, practicing the face he'll wear when he arrives. The concerned son face. The face he wears at board meetings when he's about to say something devastating in the gentlest possible tone. X. You stayed with her, Jeffrey says to Priya. You've been here the whole time. X. She needed someone to sit with her. X. You don't work in this building. X. No, I was passing through. X. He looks at her for a moment. Then he looks at Margaret, who is watching both of them with an expression of dignified patience, like someone waiting for a meeting to begin. X. I'm going to sit here until her family arrives, Jeffrey says. You can go. X. I'll stay, Priya says, simply, not defiantly, just as a statement of fact. X. He looks at her again. All right, he says, and sits down. X. For 11 minutes, Jeffrey Crane, who runs a company with 4,000 employees and a valuation that gets mentioned in national newspapers, sits in a lobby chair and listens to an old woman talk about her roses. And Priya Oduya, who drives a utility van and eats cold breakfast sandwiches and has not talked about the 8 years she spent in uniform to almost anyone, sits on the other side and drinks terrible lobby coffee and answers every question Margaret asks her, even the ones she asks twice. Douglas Fenn arrives at 8:04. He comes through the revolving door with 2 people behind him, his wife, Paulette, tight-faced and moving fast, and a man Priya doesn't recognize who has the particular look of someone brought for a specific purpose. Legal or medical, she can't tell which. Douglas stops when he sees the 3 of them. Mother. He crosses the lobby in 6 long strides and takes Margaret's hands. Mother, we've been. Are you all right? What happened? I was waiting for Robert, Margaret says. Douglas flinches. Robert is his brother, Priya will learn later. Robert, who died 11 years ago. Douglas straightens up and looks at Jeffrey with an expression so controlled it must have taken practice. Jeffrey. Douglas. Thank you for. I appreciate that someone. He glances at Priya. I'm sorry, and you are? Priya Oduya. I found your mother at 7:15 and stayed with her until help arrived. Right, yes. Well, he reaches into his jacket. Let me get your information. We'll make sure you're... I don't need anything. He pauses. The hand stays in the jacket. I'm sorry? I didn't stay because I wanted something. I stayed because she needed someone. You don't owe me anything. Paulette puts her hand on Margaret's shoulder and begins gently helping her to her feet. The man with the legal or medical look steps forward to assist. Douglas is still looking at Priya with an expression she can't fully read. He starts. He stops. Thank you, he says finally, and the word sounds like it costs him something. Jeffrey is quiet beside her. He doesn't say anything until Douglas and his family are moving toward the exit. Margaret between Paulette and the other man, Douglas 1 step behind, phone already out. How did you know? Jeffrey asks. Priya looks at him. Know what? That she needed someone. Most people walked past. I wasn't looking for it, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. She picks up her bag. She had that look. My grandmother had it. I recognized it. She stands. She holds out her hand. He shakes it. His grip is firm but not performed. The handshake of someone who is actually paying attention. Your security assessment, he says, for the parking structure. I'll have the report to your office by Thursday. Take Friday, he says. The report can wait. You've already done more important work this morning. She almost smiles. I'll see you Thursday. She walks toward the east exit. The morning light is coming through the revolving doors now. Proper morning light, the kind that hits the marble floor and scatters into something almost beautiful. She pushes through and walks out into it. Her van is where she left it. The breakfast sandwich is still there too, completely cold now, completely inedible. She looks at it for a moment, then puts the van in drive. She doesn't think about what happened next, not in the way the story gets told afterward. She doesn't know, sitting in that van, that Jeffrey Crane goes directly back to his 32nd floor office and calls his lawyer. Not to talk about Douglas Fenn's restructuring proposal. To talk about something else, something that's been sitting in a different folder, unactioned, for 4 months. The complaint that 3 female junior employees filed against Douglas's appointed deputy, a man named Crawford, who has been making the kind of comments that are precisely calibrated to be just deniable enough. Jeffrey had been waiting. He hadn't known what he was waiting for. He knows now. He tells his lawyer to proceed. He also calls Clearwater Ridge and makes a donation significant enough that they upgrade their perimeter monitoring system. The thing that failed that morning, the thing that let Margaret walk out of an unlocked garden gate at 6:15 a.m. because someone on the night shift hadn't followed protocol. He doesn't do it with his name on it. He asks them to credit it to a concerned neighbor. Priya doesn't know any of this on Thursday when she delivers her security report. Or on the Friday afternoon, 2 weeks later, when Jeffrey's assistant calls to ask if she'd be available for a longer-term contract. An independent security review of the full building, executive floor included. She finds out about Crawford 6 weeks after that when it's in the news. The deputy has resigned. 3 employees are quoted, names withheld. A fourth comes forward the week after. X. She doesn't connect it to the lobby, not at first. X. It's Margaret who connects it, in the unexpected way that Margaret connects most things now, sideways, through a door you didn't know was open. X. Priya goes to visit her. She doesn't know why, exactly. She gets the address from the Clearwater Ridge card she still has in her bag. And one Saturday in November, she drives out to Airdrie with a box of shortbread from a bakery on 17th and signs in at the front desk and asks if Margaret is available for a visitor. X. She is. X. They sit in the sunroom. Margaret doesn't remember the lobby or the morning or the tea. She doesn't remember Priya at all. But she doesn't seem bothered by this. She seems interested in Priya, in the open and uncomplicated way that sometimes comes when the part of the brain that manages social anxiety has quieted. X. You have good hands, Margaret says, looking at them. X. Thank you. X. Someone taught you to hold yourself. Not a question. X. Yes, a few people. X. Military? X. Priya looks at her, yes. X. Margaret nods, satisfied. My husband was. Robert too. A pause. Robert's gone now. X. I know. I'm sorry. X. Margaret looks out the window at the courtyard, where the last of the November garden has been cut back for winter. Jeffrey came last week, she says conversationally. X. Priya's quiet for a moment. Did he? X. He comes. I don't always remember him, but I remember his voice. She tilts her head slightly. He told me there was a young woman who sat with me one morning, who stayed. X. Priya doesn't answer. X. He said she had good judgment. Margaret looks back at her. Those eyes, clearer today than they were in the lobby. That's a rare thing. People don't stay anymore. They're always on their way somewhere. X. She was on her way somewhere, Priya says, without meaning to. X. But she stopped. Margaret smiles. Small and exact, the smile of someone who has spent a lifetime being precise. That's the whole thing, isn't it? Just stopping. X. The shortbread goes fast. Margaret eats 3 pieces and compliments the bakery, asks what street it's on, asks twice, and Priya tells her twice without showing that she's telling her twice. An aide comes at 3 o'clock to help Margaret to her afternoon rest, and Priya walks back through the facility to the parking lot. X. It's cold. The kind of Calgary cold that is serious about itself, that means what it says. She sits in the van for a moment before starting the engine. X. She thinks about what Margaret said, about stopping. X. She thinks about the lobby, the marble floor and the morning light. The woman in the slate-gray coat, sitting perfectly still with her hands folded on her handbag, watching a door for someone who wasn't coming. X. She thinks about all the people who walked past. X. She doesn't think about it often. The army, the tours, the particular kind of vigilance you develop and then cannot turn off. She doesn't talk about it. People ask sometimes, at parties or on first dates or when they find out, and she gives them the short answer, the answer that fits into a normal conversation, and then she changes the subject. X. But what she thinks about, sitting in the Airdrie parking lot with the heater running, is that the vigilance, that constant, exhausting, wired attention to everything around her, the thing she spent years trying to quiet, found something worth doing on a Tuesday morning in a Calgary lobby. X. She found a woman who needed to not be alone. X. That's all. That's the whole thing. X. She puts the van in drive and pulls out onto the highway, heading south, back into the city, into the ordinary Tuesday becoming Wednesday of her life. The sky above the highway is the particular blue that only exists in Alberta in late autumn, deep and specific and unashamed of itself. X. She doesn't know, not yet, that Jeffrey Crane has told this story to his board, not as a lesson, not as a speech, just as something that happened, just as something he wanted them to know. X. She doesn't know that Douglas Fenn, who heard a version of it from his mother on one of her clearer days, called his lawyer and withdrew the restructuring proposal the following week. Not because of guilt, exactly. Or maybe because of guilt, exactly. He didn't explain. X. And she doesn't know, won't know for another 3 months, that one of the 3 employees who filed the original complaint against Crawford is a young woman named Sella, 24, who has been driving to work every morning telling herself today is the day she'll say something, and then not saying something and then driving home, who saw the news story about Crawford's resignation and sat in her own car in her own parking lot and finally let herself cry. X. Sella doesn't know Priya's name. She doesn't know anything about a lobby or an old woman or shortbread from a bakery on 17th Avenue. X. But she benefited from the stopping. X. That's how it works, mostly. The things that matter travel underground, invisible, and by the time they surface somewhere you can see them, you've long since moved on to the next day, the next cold breakfast, the next city block, the next person sitting too still in a place where people are only supposed to pass through. X. Priya emerges onto Deerfoot Trail. The radio is playing something she half recognizes. She turns it up. X. It is an ordinary Wednesday morning in Calgary, and she is on her way to work. And somewhere in Airdrie, an old woman is resting with her hands folded, dreaming, maybe, of roses that know when they're ready. X. I keep thinking about the people who walked past. X. Not because I want to judge them, I genuinely don't. They had meetings to get to, coffees going cold, phones buzzing in their pockets. They were living their lives, which is a reasonable thing to do. But Margaret was sitting right there, dressed beautifully, hands folded, watching a door for someone who wasn't coming. And not one of them stopped. Not one. X. Priya stopped, and I think about why. X. It wasn't random. It wasn't luck. Priya stopped because she had trained herself for 8 years to pay attention to what other people tune out. That's the thing about real discipline, the kind you build over years, the kind that costs you something. It doesn't switch off when you leave the job. It becomes part of how you move through the world. She walked into that lobby doing work, and her attention caught something, and she listened to what it was telling her. That's not instinct, X. That's character, built slowly the hard way. X. And then there's what she did with it. She didn't call it in and move on. She didn't do the minimum. She sat down, she got tea, she talked about roses, she stayed for 40 minutes, when she could have been gone in 5, because she understood, the way some people just understand, that what Margaret needed wasn't logistics. It was presence, someone to just be there. X. That kind of moral clarity, the kind that shows up not in grand gestures but in the quiet decision to stay, that's rarer than we admit. X. What I find remarkable is the consequence. Not the obvious one, not Jeffrey's gratitude, not Douglas withdrawing his proposal, not even Crawford's resignation, though that mattered enormously to the women who'd been waiting for someone to do something. The consequence I keep returning to is Sela, a young woman Priya never met, sitting in her own car, finally letting herself cry, finally feeling like maybe the world had some mechanism for fairness after all. X. Priya's one decision, to stop, to stay, traveled underground through a chain of events she couldn't have predicted and surfaced somewhere she'll never see, and helped someone she'll never know. X. That's how it actually works. Not in straight lines, not in ways you can track or take credit for. X. 'Cause doesn't announce itself, and neither does consequence. X. What I take from Priya's story is something I want to sit with for a while. She had every reason to keep walking. She was busy. She was professional. The woman in the chair wasn't her responsibility by any definition most of us would accept. But she had built something in herself. Through hard years, through discipline, through choosing to pay attention even when it was exhausting, that made stopping feel like the only reasonable option. Her integrity wasn't a decision she made in the lobby. X. It was the result of 1,000 smaller decisions made before that morning. X. And Jeffrey. Jeffrey, who had all the power in that building and could have sent someone else down, could have managed it from a distance. He went himself. He sat in the lobby chair. He listened to an old woman talk about roses. Maybe that's the quietest kind of courage there is. The willingness to be present for something that doesn't require your presence. To show up not because it benefits you, but because it's the right room to be in. X. I think about Margaret's roses, how she said people prune too early, how you have to wait for the canes to tell you they're ready. X. I think that's true of people too.